Don't leave anyone alive!
I had to imagine that soldiers were meant to be put all over this map to do a, let's see, 180-degree defense. No, maybe not so much as a 180 degree. If they were gonna get hit from this side, they'd be in a lot of trouble because a lot of these soldiers would be hit from behind. It would not help them. The only line of defense would be right over here that could help defend soldiers trying to hit in from here. If they were hit completely from behind, which is unlikely because it's very likely that reinforcements would be coming from there. But if they were to be hit completely from behind, then the Confederates would be screwed.
Engaging target! In the name of our most righteous majesty. Loaded! Light them up! Enemy infantry there!
Oh! Another soldier lost his hat. Those are very, very fancy hats. It's sad to lose those.
Get ready for a fight. I need to reload. Light him up. Unload on. Enemy is ahead. Enemy infantry. Here they come. He's suppressed. Get out of here. Fire. Oh, God. I'm hit. Keep it up, man. We're killing.
Oh wow. Hang on. What happened over here? There are... Okay, there are 2 soldiers left on this part over here. Oh! Looks like they're getting some reinforcements. Looks like some of the soldiers that are on free move back here decided that they wanted to move.
Pour it on. Get covered. Find cover. I hear ya.
I can't zoom in.
Here they come.
I want to zoom in on these flag bearers. Whoops. That was not supposed to happen. Ah, here they are. These brave flag bearers waving the flag for their state. Looks like a lot of states are actually here. A lot of troops from several states are here.
Doesn't look too bad. Targets in the open. Heads up, engaging. Prepare for battle. Keep moving.
It looks like some soldiers pulled back. Or maybe they pushed forward, I don't know. But everything is much smoother now. Lovely. Let's see. There's still a lot of just a lot of soldiers on the field compared to people on the Confederate side. Look at this. The line's almost completely eviscerated. There's one guy over here somewhere. Let me... I think I wanted to help him wherever he is. Okay. It's Officer Walnut. I think I'll just set you up over here. Probably a bad idea considering your revolver is short range.
We've got contact! Go! Enemy infantry!
Ooh. Oh, they're soldiers starting to focus on this flank now. There are not that many troops. There are a few guys, but there are not that many troops left, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, depends on which one you're rooting for. I'm obviously kind of a fan of the North, despite admiring many of the generals in the South. And for good reason. They were great. There were some very great tacticians in the South. It's one of the reasons why the Civil War lasted so long. You think that 4 years is short, but it's really not. Especially considering how small the Confederate Army and under... what do you call it? They just weren't given... They were outmanned, outgunned, outproduced, let's see, had less ships. I think actually one of the first submarines appeared in the Civil War. Actually, one submarine. It failed, I think, miserably, but one of the first submarines actually came to existence in the Civil War. Although I actually might be wrong, but I saw it in a documentary, and occasionally documentaries are wrong. Sometimes a lot of times they're only about 80% correct. I mean, it entirely depends.
He's okay. Here they come. They got a machine gun. We got enemy movement over here. This is it. Moving.
I really had to look that up, but if I click on anything, this whole game will minimize, and I don't want that.
Incoming heavy armor. Everybody down. Don't leave anyone alive.
One of the reasons why I like North so much is they were more of a they were more industrialized, and also they were more technologically advanced than the South was. It's just their commanders weren't very good, and even their good commanders were actually being they were being attacked by the other generals, the more popular generals, which is kind of sad. There was this kind of rivalry between certain generals in the North, which is something that you really... It's supposed to be a good thing, but this is kind of mean-spirited type of deal.
Squad, regroup on me. Hustle up. Come on, go.
But there was a lot of new technology that came into existence during the war.
Engaging the enemy now. This land is ours. Heads up, engaging. Hard. I can't move. Enemy infantry. Hostiles moving on us. Follow your orders. I need help. Keep me covered while I reload. Aim. You saw. We come. Covering fire. Get their hands down. Move out. Keep low. Make ready for battle. Forward. They've got us zeroed in. Hostiles moving on us! Sound the call to battle! There's nothing you can do for Suppressing fire!
One of the main reasons why the South lost the Civil War, and I think it's one of the reasons why the Civil War started. Yeah, actually, they say it's honestly they say it's one of the reasons why the Civil War started. So I can't really say might be. It's one of the reasons why the Civil War started is because the South didn't necessarily believe in industrialization. They were not a society that believed in that, and I think that's one of the reasons why the conditions were so bad. Like, soldiers were, or the people that were in the South were so poor that a lot of times the only things that they had were the shirts on their backs and just some bit of land that they barely survive on. The health was bad. There was very little entertainment, and which is, you can see why they wanted slaves, because it was the only form of luxury that they had. They didn't have anything else. They had checkers, they had dancers, even though the wives didn't want them there at all. But that was only in more populated towns. Some areas just didn't have that big of a population. There was probably not even a town at all. Just towns were probably just miles away from certain areas. But that's when you look further west. But it didn't help that they were being taxed so much. One of the things that the North was trying to do was to reduce slavery by taxing it, and the problem with that was 70% of people didn't own slaves. They couldn't even afford them, and sometimes even slave owners just didn't want to own, didn't think the slavery was a good idea, which is weird, but they didn't think that slavery was a good idea because the population was so low and people were so poor as a result of slavery. But this was going on before the cotton boom. There was less people talking about that when cotton boom happened, or so was reported. They might have just been drowned out due to the fact that there were so many. The rhetoric for keeping slaves just skyrocketed due to the fact that the cotton boom came. So, but and while it does seem like a good idea to just tax them to death, they didn't have that. They weren't really giving the South that much of a alternative, and it also just made conditions worse into the South, which kind of made the South hate the North or even more. So it's really hard to get people to see from your point of view when you're in such shoddy conditions. Like, the North was so rich, they made a lot of money, and they were also making money off of the South. It's interesting to look at the economical standpoint, and really the North relied on the South's cotton a lot. They actually just made a lot of money off of that, and the South wasn't making that much money other than those who were slave owners. So you can see the anger with those the poor. Like the rich compared to the poor people were. I can't give an actual representation, but rich people could own hundreds or thousands of slaves, and yet the poor, they didn't have anything. Most of them didn't have anything. That was the
Locked and loaded.
that was one of the things that some of the historians pointed out as to why the Civil War started. Now, of course, I did the fact that a lot of this ties down to slavery is just kind of sad, really, kind of pathetic.
Prepare the troops for battle. Affirmative, covering fire. Affirmative. Yellow dog. We can do this. Come on, man, keep it together. How you like this?
Honestly, these guys have been fighting for a long time. I'm starting to think that this side is like the safest, despite the fact that there are a few soldiers dead, but it's kind of the safest spot. There are not that many soldiers fighting against this side. They're mostly focused at the center, which has taken a lot of fire. Look at how many soldiers just fallen. These guys are still alive, surprisingly. This guy with the pistol is still alive, and another pistol guy is still alive. He's not really doing anything. Some soldiers over here. I actually need to check. Wow. So there's still a thick line on this side. North, despite taking heavy losses, there's still just a blue wave. Although, you know what, that's kind of wrong. They were, it was technically, it should be a red wave because the North was actually Republican and the South was Democrat, so I should just put it as red and blue because that's their party colors. It's already 47 minutes and it's still going on. There are so many dead soldiers, but still so many soldiers right now. I'm amazed that this battle's been going on for this long. I'm pretty sure I need to kind of split this video. It's already 40 minutes, 48 minutes in. I'll have to split it right here into another one. So yeah. And I will not be talking about how I did a split of the video. It's just gonna split. That's it.
Forward! Crown and country! Take that objective! Stay back! Stay back! Hostiles moving on us! I'm set down! I can't move! Inbound! What the hell was that? Fire! Outflank them! Open fire! We got enemies! Give me a grenade! What are you waiting for? Fire! Hands up! Firing! Enemy infantry! In the name of our most righteous majesty. Ready? Breaking fire! Don't let them go! Push forward! Enemy! Fire on target! We got enemy movement over here! Get on the cover now! Got contact! How you like this? Aim This land is ours by right. Enemy reinforcements are inbound. Keep firing! Shit! We got shooters inbound. Heads up, firing! This land is ours.
It's amazing that these soldiers are still fighting. Oh, that's so cool. That scene. This guy. This poor guy. I need to switch. This is probably going to be my second thumbnail for the next part of the video. Where'd he go? Where'd the body? Where'd the body? Where is he? There he is. You poor soul. You fight for your very, very short-lived country. But you... I can't zoom in any closer without messing up the map. He had a wife and kids. This poor soldier. You know, there's this interesting soldier. Interesting story about two men who were practically brothers. It was a slave and another guy. They were both in the South. They actually became great friends and up to the point of brotherhood, and they actually both eventually joined to the war. I don't really know when. Obviously, it was illegal for blacks to join to the war up until the Confederate army started losing. But there were actually blacks that fought for the South. You can say that was illegal at the start, but there still were. But I don't really think that these guys, this guy officially fought. I think they started much earlier. And I think they both, died together on the battlefield. It's an actually interesting story that you don't usually hear. Two guys, a slave and a white guy fighting alongside each other for the Confederates. For the Confederate army. Ooh. Looks like one of the soldiers or the officers got really close but ended up dead. I really need to go back to this story because it was not necessarily bizarre, because there were blacks that wanted to fight for the South. Some in exchange for their freedom, some actually believing they could get some, something out of it. Some people actually wanted slaves. I get this really weird thing that I see, that the blacks that owned slaves only did it because they wanted to protect their families and such, which is true to a certain extent, but it's not completely true. There are only a few things pointed out, and in fact there were just a lot of I'm trying to point this out in a way that makes sense. In Africa, there were people that were very happy to sell slaves in exchange for money or anything else. So some of them didn't know about, some of them knew about but didn't care because they got money. Some of them knew about it but did it because they didn't want it to, you know, be sold as slaves themselves. But either way, it's really weird when I see people point out an opinion because
Shit, here they come! Enemy advancing, get ready!
I've read it in books where people own slaves. It doesn't tell why. It's just people just come out and point out why without even, you know, they don't even know the person or anything else. I don't know why a person owns slaves. I can think of any reason, you know, advantage, maybe they just wanted to fit in. Me, I wouldn't personally, I think it would be too big of a bother to actually own the slave, and also, yeah, it's kind of morally wrong. I mean, one of the reasons why slavery was still existent back then is because there were these people who were saying that the blacks were less than human. And that was, which was not true. It honestly was not true at all. But anyways, I don't know how I just pulled out. The point was that not all blacks went and owned slaves just because they were trying to protect family. There were only a few cases of that. Others just owned slaves just because they wanted to have power over people. There may be this type of, you know, preference towards people that look like you, but that doesn't make you any different from any other human being. The fact of the matter is, human beings are just being human beings, and we shouldn't think of them as any different of each other. Which is ironic, because a lot of the people that still wanted slavery to exist didn't think of a lot of the people of color to be human, which was really annoying, because at the time, or not at the time, but way back then, the church went and decided that it wanted to blame slavery because, you know, it was morally and kind of biblically wrong. They decided to ban it. They decided not to, you know, include blacks because, you know, they were less than human. Because science. They actually did. Actually, for a time, they did that to Native Americans too. The Spanish decided that Indians were less than human, therefore they can be taken in as slaves. But there was this certain number of Christians who really fought hard to stop that, and officially they did. But people over in the New World, you know, just ignored it. It was it's pretty annoying when people ignore the rule of law. At least when it comes to that terms. Sometimes the rule of law can do something really bad, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should disobey the rule of law, unless it kind of interrupts you religiously from practicing your religion, or, you know, freedom. Actually, that may be a bit too much, because some places don't offer freedom, but aren't necessarily that bad. But some places just violate every human right that you have. I don't know, I'm just saying things, and I'm not really particularly being good at doing my speech. It is 12 a.m. here. I don't know what I'm saying, but I have a passion for this American Civil War. I'm pretty sure that I said things that didn't make sense, And also, some of these might be wrong, but I'm just pointing out the things that I know from the point of when I started learning about them. And I am, albeit, pretty rusty. And these guys are still alive for some reason. I don't know why I keep moving things in weird angles. Wow, there are so much fewer soldiers than there were before. I remember them having a much better advantage. I mean, they were able to push a lot further than they were last time. I'm starting to think that I should help them, but yeah, these guys, are these guys out of ammo or something? They're constantly reloading. Let's check this inventory. Oh, he still has musket balls. So
He's spin! Now kill him!
hey, I hope this doesn't go on for 3 videos. I don't want to make this 3 videos. If this doesn't, we might actually end up having to put it as a stalemate. Actually, considering the losses of American troops, I'm not even so sure you can go. Then again, the Confederates didn't have that many troops.
Any artillery we find in the area.
The Confederates didn't really have that much troops or ammunition, so it might just be even for both sides, but it is very jarring for the North to have lost a lot of troops, especially when the Confederates just don't have enough troops to actually fight a long war. They were just trying. The thing that the Confederates were trying to do is that they were just trying to ensure their independence, because they can actually win the war. I don't actually a lot of the people who decide to leave, or a lot of the politicians who voted to leave the states actually didn't believe they would win the war at all, which is strange. Why would you leave then if you thought you weren't going to win? I think the idea was that they would try to make it the war end as quickly as possible, so that, or not as quickly as possible, just basically move into the point that the population was not in favor of the war. And during the American Civil War, it was not popular for the North to be fighting the South, period. Throughout the entire time, there was really no There was no majority of people that were for the war. Or maybe there was at the start, but there was really, it was extremely unpopular, because technically speaking, this was before Lincoln decided to make it illegal for states to just leave the United States. And they could legally leave. They voted to legally leave. And even though the South did attack one of the forts, by right, it belonged to them. That was that was kind of the mindset here, and many people didn't even want to bother with them anymore. They've basically given up. They just don't want anymore. They don't want to deal with the South, and they don't. It was just continually unpopular. At this point, the troops are starting to retreat now. They just don't have enough manpower to push. These guys are constantly reloading. I don't think they're ever going to fire. But yeah, it was. There was actually up to the point that during the end of the American Civil War, if Robert E. Lee was to actually escape from the clutches of Ulysses S. Grant, then that would be it. The war would be over, because the government was just going to bypass Lincoln and just end it, because it just didn't. It was so unpopular.
Forwards, men! He ain't going anywhere. I'm trying to finish the job. Ready for battle. Ready to fire on enemies.
Oof, that guy got slaughtered.
Enemy infantry. He's suppressed. Let's finish him off. Hit the guard. And he ain't got a zero. Where are reinforcements? No more rounds. Going out. Give me cover fire. Don't let your body down. Go. Shoot, sharpshooter. Enemy infantry. Can you see? Follow your orders. Charge.
I actually think one of the reasons why the war was so unpopular is because Lincoln did shut down one or two newspaper agencies that were saying bad things about him that weren't necessarily true. But it also it was also something that you would consider a really unpopular move, because, you know, doesn't that, like, violate your First Amendment rights? And then there was this other controversy of having hundreds of politicians arrested for certain reasons. Yeah, it's... At the time, he was extremely unpopular. People today really love him, but people all around kind of thought of him as a tyrant because of the things that he was doing during his time in office. Why are you guys still reloading? This is ridiculous. You guys should be finished reloading by now. Why? I'm just gonna have these guys try to move. You should be done by now. I'm so surprised that these guys haven't. How many troops they lost, though? Oh wow.
We saw, we conquered. Yes, sir. One more left.
Wow, a lot more of the Confederates survived than I initially thought they were. Wow.
Somebody cover me already! Shooters coming! This land is ours by
Honestly, I think that's it. I don't think these guys have the will to fight anymore. They lost so many troops already. And these guys can't really push. And I'm just gonna pretend that these guys who are constantly reloading are actually just out of ammo.
Roger, go, go! Suppressing fire! Get back out there! Go!
I mean, they're just sitting there constantly reloading. It should have been reloaded a long time ago. Actually, it does say 0 for them. They have 0 ammo. Yeah, they're out of ammunition. That's ironic. That's extremely ironic. These Confederates still have ammo. It's interesting. Normally the North has more ammo than the South does. Okay, well, I'm just gonna say that this is a victory for the South. Because, yeah, just look at the carnage. Look. So many bodies. So many bodies, especially over here. These poor guys out in the open. all slaughtered. And over here, there are quite a few dead Confederates. Quite a few, actually. Ugh. There's a lot of dead Confederates. But they still have ammo. Quite a bit of ammo to spare. So I guess this is a victory for the Confederates for now. I would,
Reclaim this land.
I feel really sorry. I feel really sorry for the North. Why? You guys did so well last time. I was actually rooting for you guys. I really was. Mostly for certain, you know, economical and also the fact that maybe I probably wouldn't be born. But that might be a bit of a stretch. But hey, you guys are still reloading. I'm just gonna have you retreat. You guys need to retreat. You badly need to retreat. I'm just gonna end it. It's impressive to see that the Confederates were able to defend this, despite the fact they were at the point of losing the last time I did a playthrough of this. And, like, there were so few. I actually ended it early before I could see who won, but the North actually had a very big advantage. Right now they don't. More than half of the Confederates have survived. I'd say this is a bit of a victory for them. But then again, you could consider it like Germany versus the Soviet Union. I need to switch this because the Republicans are red. Democrats are blue. But you could consider this like Germany versus the Soviet Union, except the South, the Confederates were not advanced compared to the North. But, you know, the North basically overwhelmed them with everything. Outgunned, outmanned, out everything. The only thing that the South had was their brains. Or at least the generals did. The other guys, a lot of them didn't even know how to spell. Education was pretty bad in the South. It still is, actually. And I wish it wasn't, but it still is. And granted, some of those reasons because a lot of the people just, you know, want to follow their father's footsteps, which is basically farming, raising cattle, other stuff. Still. Yeah. Well, I have to say, thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry. I started out differently. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe for more. And I will see you next time. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and good day.